Meanwhile, the BC Vision process continues, and here to bring us up to date is Brenda Hunt from the Battle Creek Community Foundation. Brenda, good morning.
Good morning, Richard. How are you?
Great. Thanks for the time today. So we had a big steering committee meeting recently. Now let's remind folks what the steering committee is meant to do.
Sure. The steering committee is the guiding body, kind of the governing body of the BC Vision process.
All right. So just a small job. It's a pretty big job, actually. So at this point in this process, what are we concerned with?
Yeah. I think the process has really taken shape. Everybody wonders why all this takes so long.
Yeah.
It's really hard to change things in community, you know? So what's really happened is, of course, the education study is underway. The consultants are working on that part, looking at our school districts.
I think we're going to talk with them next week, actually.
Outcome for our children, yeah. The second part of that, I think there's a couple that were significant, is the whole structure of engagement, right?
Right.
So we have a process that was really started by our two leaders at the Kellogg Company and the Kellogg Foundation, respectively, and really is a community-driven process. So a number of us have worked on what we call a nominating committee to look at the steering committee process and further community engagement. And so now there's guidelines and principles associated with that.
What does that mean, then, that in the process of steering, we've discovered that maybe we're not getting as much input as we needed?
Well, no, I think it's a beginning stage versus the next stage, and I think there's been a lot of things that I welcome from this community. One, do your meetings in the public. Two, tell us what's going on. And three, open this up so other people can be running this, not the same old folks perhaps up running that steering committee. So we have now what we would call a balance of, we have to have leaders that represent institutions that are hired to lead, and they need to do that. At the same time, we need to have a nice blend of individuals who are engaged in topic areas that they're passionate about, work that they've done, and leadership they want to exhibit on behalf of this community. So we've got 20 to 26 different positions on the steering committee, and we're polling who wants to stay on. And then now we have a way for people to fill out an application and get a phone call to be considered to be on that steering committee. So I really encourage people who have been involved or want to be involved to contact the BC Vision website, and there will be some folks there who will be able to facilitate that.
Brenda Hunt is here. We're talking about BC Vision, and we're back in just a moment on WBCK. WBCK, Brenda Hunt is here from the Battle Creek Community Foundation, working diligently with the Battle Creek Vision, the BC Vision folks, and steering committee process. So let's talk a little about this. You know, I've been circulating and hearing some things that folks have said, and you've probably heard them too. For example, I heard a raised eyebrow and a little suspicion about why we need an outside consultant to tell us what we're doing with our schools. Help us sort that out.
Yeah, I think that's all part of these type of processes.
Yes,
this is a community process, and I'm proud of this community for making it community-based and pushing things to be public and for engagement. And, you know, I started the meeting the other day, and I said, you know, I sure am pleased that we are in the middle of a BC Vision process. I'd rather be in the middle of BC Vision than not in our community. What if we didn't have it? Because it's creating so many new ideas and so much engagement. So on this, I think that our partners, particularly on this one, really led with community input, but from the Kellogg Foundation, have picked somebody they see as an expert on this topic. And they're trying to bring the very best to our community. Like it or not like it, criticize or not criticize, it's got people talking and looking at things. And I, for one, think that's a good piece, you know, because that's what motivates people to get involved. They care. And, you know, there's nothing magic about the BC Vision process or any one of us that sits in a leadership position. We're hired to lead, right? And we need to do that. But we need to really, to make change, we need the will of the people, along with probably the best folks that we can pull down to come here and look at our community. So I, for one, am proud. I invite the crisscrossing back and forth. I see it, I read it, I take it into consideration. I don't feel like I need to answer to it, and I don't feel like I need to change it. I think it's good.
Yeah, I can see both sides of that. I, for example, have been involved in nonprofits and boards and things, and sometimes the notion is when you bring somebody from the outside, what do they know? But the notion is they might know something we don't. So you get both sides of that. And so here we have this person who has, I would presume, quite a broad view of this educational process, right?
Right. I welcome folks who have experience with this throughout the country. You know, these problems are deep, and we didn't get here in a year or 2 years. You know, and one thing I know about Battle Creek is we're very resilient. We've met upon tough times before, and we've reignited and started this community. And one of those times where we need to do that is right in front of us right now. And I think the conversations I'm hearing are more about ideas and optimism than they were a year ago, and certainly much more than they were 2 years ago from where I sit. And I think that's good, but we have to keep moving this forward, and we have to listen and hear from outside ourselves, because A, it'll give us new ideas, and B, we need to meet those up with the will of our people.
Is there a certain thing that you, as you look at this somewhat broadly, that is a discovery of something that needs attention that has now become, that has been met now with urgency and priority that maybe hadn't before?
Yeah, I think we're on two fronts. I know of 2 or 3 ideas out there where people privately are trying to affect transportation, particularly to the fort for employees. And one of them's a privatized effort, and everybody has the right to come up with a business plan and try a business idea. So this isn't all about nonprofits and institutions responding either. So I want to encourage people on that line. The second one is I took the time to go on the site visit for the child care centers. And the model is one in which we let teachers essentially work with the children. And then the back office, all the financials and all those are hubbed into one location to lower down. And the intermediate school district's playing a major leadership role on that right now in this community with the Great Start Collaborative, along with BC Pulse. But I think that's when we better take a very quick look at. What we saw in Seattle was it didn't matter where the child care center was. Didn't matter what part of the city, it didn't matter the social economic status of that community. It was all about learning, and everything old is new again. There wasn't a computer screen in one of those rooms for those children, and they have closed some of those discrepancies and those early childhood gaps in learning and education. So I think if that's laying right before us and we've seen it, we have some responsibility to move on some of these things.
So the two things that we often hear about, how do I get there? And who's going to take care of my kids while I'm gone? Those are the two things you're saying have really gained traction here.
I think when you look across the continuum of all the situations that we have to meet with, and there's many of them, those two right now are major barriers that we need to build up and then to work on that continuum. I think the concept of sitting down with somebody that we heard Ben Damerow and Matt Lynn talk about and really trying to assess what their barriers to employment are, then is the next step. And I do think we've got to go person by person. Because we know there's a whole group of people out there that have stopped looking for a job or don't know how. And they're not in that unemployment rate number.
They're out there, but almost invisible.
Exactly.
Yeah. Brenda Hunt is here. We're talking about BC Vision. More in just a minute here. For WBCK, we're here with Brenda Hunt for a few more minutes. Battle Creek Community Foundation. BC Vision is our focus. So help us understand. The steering committee then is moving these things along. So when you have a steering committee session, everybody leaves with marching orders and homework that's supposed to be done when you come back. Is that how that works?
Yeah, I think the staff has to sort out what some of the next steps are. And I think the steering committee is getting more comfortable doing business in front of on a public setting, access vision and microphones and wide open like that. I think that's a good part of a community process, but I think not every community does it that way, so we all had to get used to that. The second part of that is there's, a lot of things are going back, and back and forth in there, and the steering committee is about hearing recommendations for next steps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's some things then that are very clear based on plans of how those have to be carried out, and then there are other things where we got to go back and do a little reworking. So I just know from some of that we've been talking with action groups and steering committee members, and I'm hearing a lot more where people are having some meetings, and there's action teams and there's schedules and all of these things going on, but also we've got people interacting across sectors with all their different ideas, and then I'm getting phone calls. You know, sometimes it's because we're pretty open and we have a pretty good front on a phone number to get to. But yesterday there was somebody presenting on our office that wants to have people that are interested in investing, and they invest in ideas and projects in this community. So that kind of energy, innovation that comes from the people, our job is to shelter them and help them get to how we get these things started in a community, and that takes a collaborative effort. So I'm pretty optimistic.
Well, and if you think about if someone is interested in investing and they could do it anywhere, we presume this kind of effort going on in the community signals to them that this is a good thing.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things we need to work on from a structured sense with BC Vision that we've been very good at articulating, and everybody's saying, how come it's these items, and we've been able to defend that. But the other parts of processes like this that get going, and the number one thing that I believe that we need in this community right now is people to act and invest, okay? We are at an all-time low of people, companies, and banks investing in the development and in ideas and businesses in our community. And that has a lot to do with prosperity and hope and projection. And if BC Vision in its organized, structured work helps with that piece and gets that prosperity and thought pattern going where people want to do that investment, then and want to try new things and business ideas and those things start to, that will rise the tide, along with the very structured work of a BC Vision process where we're also engaging people in those outcomes on those focused areas.
So what's been the biggest barrier, you think, to that lack of investment so far?
I think we've been through probably one of the toughest times, and the economic downturn of 2008 was devastating to our community. Our neighborhoods are harder hit than ever from that standpoint. And so, while we say we're back, if you look at all the economic numbers in the market, it says everything's kind of recovered. Not in Battle Creek. We're not better yet. We haven't recovered better than 2008 for a whole group of people. Some have, but not the whole. And so that's why a BC Vision process is so important. But that's also why we got to get people to believe in ourselves again and act and take action and open up some of those areas. So we lost a lot, and you can feel it and see it. And the factors indicate that, all the leading indicators indicate that we've dropped back a little bit, particularly when you look at employment issues.
Right. So if someone, you say BC Vision to them and they get all pessimistic about it, maybe they need to zoom out and look at the big picture?
My only thought pattern is if they're going to be pessimistic about it, that's fine with me. I just want to know what else you're doing in the community to make it prosperous. Maybe you're raising your family and doing the very best you can to be a great citizen. That's good enough. That's a great start. But if they're going to be pessimistic about BC Vision, I don't need to convert them. I just want to know what they're doing to contribute to their community. And sometimes raising a child is really good, and don't take that for granted. Sometimes doing that in volunteering or putting some of their ideas to work, or, who knows what that ETC is on that end. So I don't think we have to convert everybody into a BC Vision supporter. We need to convert them into, I'm doing something for my hometown.
That sounds like a good place to leave it. By the way, what's the next step here? Another steering committee meeting soon, I presume.
Yeah, we've got one in September, and there's a lot of action groups taking place. And I have this sense that new action levels, just by conversations, and I had a 7:30 meeting this morning with several people that says, well, we got to make sure all these things meet up together, and this energy's going. So I've got a 5 o'clock meeting tonight with somebody who's invested in our downtown and has a new idea because of some things he heard at BC Vision last week. He probably had the idea before and it's brought it up.
Just brought it up now. It sparked that advancement, which is, I guess, the point, right? Yeah. Brenda Hunt, Battle Creek Community Foundation. We'll check in again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.